Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your evangelist of the imagination, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett. That would be me, and I am Rob casting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity. This is Robservations episode number 680. By the way, it is this poser Star Wars day that's more shamelessly dreamed up by some marketing people than Valentine's Day was. So let's talk about that. Or let's not. Star Wars Day was, and always will be May 25th. Why you celebrate May the 4th be with you? I don't know. Yes, I do know that Hot Toys dropped a few new toys. One of the Bad Batch is now going to be a figure. That's pretty tasty. And one of the creatures that the Mandalorian rode, you can get the creature or the Mandalorian in a 2-pack. You can do that. And there's all kinds of other things. I guess that's cool. So that's fine. And if you want to celebrate it, who am I to say no? I don't want to yuck your yum or harsh your mellow. That's not what I want to do. Never. But I'll tell you, there's a lot going on in terms of movie going. And it's very funny. It seems like the status of the American movie industry changes on a weekly basis, depending on what might have happened at the box office this weekend. Obviously, Godzilla vs. Kong did very well. Better than expected. It has outgrossed the last Godzilla film, even though it concurrently was appearing on HBO Max and in theaters. And that looked like it boded well for the return of movie theaters. LA, we might get our theaters opened here. I might be able to go to my first movie since February of 2020, which would be nice. But of course, this weekend rolls around, the second weekend of Mortal Kombat and Demon Slayer, and the box office didn't go well. And now everyone's talking about, what happened? The precipitous drop in box office. And I'm here to tell you, when it comes to this, let's look at things for what they are. And I'm going to jump right into this. I want to just jump right into this article. Mortal Kombat and Demon Slayer continue gritty box office fight for number one, but both picks hit the mat hard in the weekend. Anthony D'Alessandro talks about this. This was from yesterday, May 2nd, or actually 2 days ago. From Sunday AM update. What's upsetting about this weekend is how these two movies, Mortal Kombat and Demon Slayer, which had very notable openings and further revived the domestic box office, dropped precipitously this weekend, respectively, at 73% and 70%. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is a huge drop, but not unprecedented. Funimation Aniplex is calling Demon Slayer's weekend at number 2, $6.4 million for number 1 with a running total of $32.2 million, and New Line's Mortal Kombat at number 2 with a weekend 2 of $6.2 million and a $34 million 10-day total. No one was expecting this type of tumble. What does this say to the U.S. has to close? What does this say as the U.S. has to close 70% of 40,700 screens reopened, and there's talk of Los Angeles and San Francisco moving to the yellow tier, which could get theaters to 75% capacity. I would say this. Mortal Kombat and Demon Slayer, if your movie-going audience is like this big, so let's say here's your 4-quadrant movie-going audience, both of these things were so niche that they probably interested about this much of the movie-going public. So I would say that the precipitous tumble for these movies are so specialized. Look, Mortal Kombat, I know that a lot of people were waiting, but again, it was a lower tier, less expensive video game film that also was premiering on HBO Max. And just going by my own bad self, This is not a movie that I would even think about going out and rolling out to the theater to go see, to be honest. I'd watch it on HBO Max because it is what it is. And I think we're not going to know, I was saying this earlier on the John Campea show, until we get numbers from HBO Max, which we're really not going to get. But if HBO Max says that they're very happy with the viewership, then maybe it is a win. You know, I mean, it's expensive to put movies out into the theaters, but I don't know what they were expecting. 34 million, let's say it was a 4-quadrant movie, and we had all the theaters open. It might have done 50 or 60 million at the box office, which would have been very, very respectable. Now, it's just a different kind of a thing. Moviegoers are savvy. They know Godzilla vs. Kong is a movie people want to see on a big screen. I mean, Mortal Kombat, I think less so. And look, Godzilla vs. Kong is a 4-quadrant movie. Parents take their kids. People such as myself go. It's got a much wider appeal, a much broader appeal than something like Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is niche. Demon Slayer anime in the theaters, the fact that it made $20 million, that's got to be an epic win for somebody. And I understand that precipitous drop happened, but it's not unprecedented for movies like horror films to drop that far, especially during a time of a pandemic. So, you know, people can Monday morning quarterback this all they want, but I don't think it's really that much. I mean, let's see when movies like Black Widow or Fast and Furious 9 open. Let's see where we're at in terms of theatrical experience then. I would imagine those movies are going to do at least Godzilla vs. Kong numbers, if not a lot more. Plus, we're going to have more theaters open. I mean, I get my second vaccination shot on the 11th. A lot of people are going to be fully vaccinated in another month. And by the time Black Widow comes out, even more so, other than the people that won't get vaccinated for various reasons. But I would say that for the most part, coming out of COVID, it does look very optimistic. You can't look at Mortal Kombat and judge it by the same way as, say, Godzilla vs. Kong. But anyway, that's just an aside. That's not what I really wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about more of a sort of an overall philosophical approach to where we're going and what we're doing in terms of the movie-going experience. Now, we've talked a lot about how over the last 20 years, your entertainment time, because after all, time is the fire in which we burn, all entertainment is based on time. Do you have the time to be entertained? And there's only 24 hours in a day. So if you decide to, I don't know, binge watch something, like say you binge watch Dota, Dragon's Blood, our Netflix series, and you binge the whole thing, that's about 3.5 hours of your time. If you're going to watch a movie, most movies are between 90 minutes and 2 hours, unless you're going to go for an epic, like The Right Stuff or The Godfather Part 2 or something like that, then you top out at over even 3 hours. If you want to watch Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, the extended version, you're talking 4 hours. Or the Snyder cut of Justice League, 4 hours. It's still time. It's still a percentage of your day. And if you're up to 4 hours, well, that's a big percentage of your day. So the question is, with all of these entertainment choices, streaming, all the things that are on streaming, YouTube, which is all kinds of things, bite-sized morsels or long-form intellectual dark web discussions like Dave Rubin or Joe Rogan. I know people are like, I hate Dave Rubin. I'm just using it as an example. I like Brett Weinstein's Dark Horse podcast. Whatever it is you choose, or whether you're going to play a video game. And if you get sucked into that world, you'll play a video game for how long? How many hours will you play that for? So there's only so much hours in the day. Now, for the better part of the 20th century, movie-going was the entertainment choice. I mean, of course, you had live theater, you had concerts, but not everywhere in the country had access to those kinds of entertainments. And movies were sort of ubiquitous. They became ubiquitous everywhere, and they were the kind of entertainment that was mostly the most easily accessible, that was really tremendous mainstream entertainment. Movies are incredible. Their place in the world at the hierarchy has changed. And so instead of just movies now, you've got, I think, movies, YouTube, video games, whatever. They're all kind of at the same place now. Young people don't dig movies as much as, say, older generations because they grew up with video games. And video games are making, some of them are, grossing $1 billion, just like the biggest movies, if not more. And it's just a different kind of an entertainment. It's a different world we live in. And I've seen it happen. As much as I'm loath to admit it, movie going and movies themselves don't play the same importance in the lives of a lot of people the way they did when I was growing up. Because, for instance, even video games, I understand video games have become so sophisticated that a lot of what you get out of movies are provided by video games in terms of storyline, whether it's The Last of Us or Ghost of Tsushima or even a Call of Duty, a modern Call of Duty game or something. So there's a lot going on. And then, of course, streaming services when you want to binge watch shows, old or new. A lot has changed. And I've been grappling with this issue because movie going and movies are my favorite. They're my favorite art form. They're a culmination of all the art forms that came before, using classical music and acting and literature and the added benefit of technology, all wrapping together to create that wondrous, dreamlike entertainment that we've all known and loved that gave us, well, Star Wars that we're celebrating today. But there was an interesting article that came out on April 22nd that I wanted to share. And it's an interview that Richard Brody did with writer-director Paul Schrader. Paul Schrader, of course, wrote Taxi Driver, but then he became a filmmaker in his own right, doing movies like Blue Collar and Hardcore early on. He did First Reformed with Ethan. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? You know, Ethan Hawke. And then his most recent movie is, I believe, it's either The Card Player, I think, with Oscar Isaac, or The Card Sharp. Anyway, I want to read an article, an interview with Paul Schrader that Richard Brody did in the New Yorker 2 weeks ago on April 22nd. So I'll just jump into this, and I thought it was really great. Paul Schrader on making and watching movies in the age of Netflix. The screenwriter and director discusses the future of cinema and the transformation of audiences. Paul Schrader is in the midst of one of the most illustrious careers in Hollywood history, but much of it seems to have occurred under the radar. He wrote Taxi Driver and The Last Temptation of Christ and co-wrote Raging Bull. He's directed dozens of films, including Blue Collar and American Gigolo, which launched Richard Gere as a star. Mishima, one of the most ambitious and visionary ever produced by a studio, and Affliction, which won James Coburn an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Hollywood has a short memory. For his 2013 film The Canyon, starring Lindsay Lohan, he turned to Kickstarter for financing. Raised in a strict Calvinist family in Michigan, Schrader has kept the self-sacrificing, self-tormenting passion of rigorous Christianity at the center of even his most secular work. In the righteous fury of the working man, the boxer, the sex worker, the parent, and of course the artist. With First Reformed, in which he wrote and directed the story of a minister, Ethan Hawke, in spiritual and moral agony, he instantly broke through a generational barrier. That film transformed his status from a hard-scrabble survivor of New Hollywood's golden age, or golden days. He became, like his longtime associate Martin Scorsese, an iconic embodiment of the cinema itself. The movie also got him his first Oscar nomination for his screenplay. It's amazing that was his first Oscar nomination. Schrader's identification with the art goes back beyond his career as a filmmaker. He started as a critic, launched on that path by Pauline Kael herself, whom he met in 1967, and in 1972 published a book, Transcendental Style in Film, about three directors who remain among his prime influences: Robert Bresson, Carl Dreyer, and Yasujiro Ozu. It's still a touchstone of cinema studies. Schrader's critical insights are embodied in his movies, whether with ingenious transformations of genre conventions or with direct references to films he loves. For instance, the ending of American Gigolo is a reinterpretation of the ending of Bresson's Pickpocket. But in recent years, which I think you can get on Criterion Blu-ray, but in recent years, he's sustained his critical discourse occasionally, often in the pages of Film Comment, and casually, as in a recent Facebook post, in which he discussed the state of filmmaking in the age of streaming. That post caught my eye for what Schrader had to say about the dwindling significance of the feature film, which, by the way, I agree with, which is why I'm sharing this article with you. I spoke to him about why the format still matters and what the ongoing changes in the industry mean for the art of movies and his own art. I saw your Facebook post on Saturday, and it got me thinking. You call it an observation about film economics, but it's as much an observation about film aesthetics. I'm interested in the fact that you have the sense that the feature film is coming to an end because of the rise of streaming series, whether fictional series, documentary series. Paul Schrader says, well, it's in remission. And strangely enough for me, I find myself watching more documentaries and episodics now. The 2-hour format, which was so ideally suited to theatrical, we've now trained young people for 15 months not to see that as a primary way to have audiovisual entertainment. Now, how they come back, or if they come back, they're certainly not going to come back in the way they once were. I see 4 venues for theatrical. And one is Extreme Spectacle, which is like 4DX, or like that Van Gogh immersive experience that's coming. I can't wait to see that, by the way, that you have to go out of the house for. That's a reason to go out of the house. Children's movies, of course, because you want to see your kids laugh with other kids. That's really for the parents more than for the kids. And then you have Date Night Movie, which is horror and a certain kind of teen comedy, and there'll still be a place for that. And then you'll have what we now call club cinema, which is where you can have a membership. This is like the Burns or the Metropole or the Film Forum, the Angelica, where martini is the new popcorn. And if you go, is it the Metropole or the Metropolitan? Metrograph, I mean. They're event-based, and I think those places will come back. But the normal mall cinema or multi-cinema, I think that's a real struggle. They say that 50% of the restaurants in New York won't open. Well, I think that's certainly true also of movie theaters. And so we are rethinking that whole concept, and it's a rethinking going across the board because it's also happening to the Oscars. What do the Oscars mean anymore? Does anybody care anymore? Will the festivals have the strength that they used to have? And this idea of the 2-hour serious movie, which evolved in many ways as a reaction to television, where the film companies all had agents in New York looking for the new serious book. From Here to Eternity, we're going to do that. And that's gone now. Nobody's looking for the new serious book. And to make a movie today, a quality movie, let's say a movie like HUD or The Hustler, that movie's not being made. Now there's quality long form, but I think the serious 2-hour film, I have a film that's opening, The Card Counter, that's what it is, not The Card Player, The Card Counter, which fits in that mold. And I've been thinking of writing a new script after that, and I just find myself wondering, who will make such a film? And so I think that the shift, which is the third, what's the word for it? Tectonic? The third tectonic shift. The first occurred after Birth of a Nation when you went into big theaters and they realized you could make a lot of money putting a lot of people in a dark room without air conditioning. And out of that, the movie palaces came and all of that. And then the second shift occurred when they had to go deal with television. And ironically, this occurred right at the same time as the rise of the intelligent film, the serious film, which started here in this country with people like John Frankenheimer and Arthur Penn, but was primarily started in Europe with neorealism. And all of a sudden there was another way, another reason to go to the movies. You can go to the movies to see a Bergman film. You couldn't see them on television. You can go to the movies to see a serious new film by the artist. And this became clear to me a couple of years ago when I was talking to my relatives in Western Michigan, and I asked them, "What movies do you see?" And my cousin said to me, "We see Netflix." And I realized the genius of, what's his name? Reed Hastings? Yeah, Reed. Because movies had begun as a place to go. And there was a phrase that was used in the olden times called, "This is where we came in." Meaning we just walked in without regards to showtimes, and now we sat through it as it began again. And okay, this is where we came in. And then after the war and with the rise of television, it started to become not, let's go see a movie, but let's go see a specific movie. Let's go see this movie we've been hearing about. And therefore, there was also the rise of film criticism. Because how do people know what movie they want to see unless they're reading some criticism? So let's see that new movie with so-and-so, or from that book, or so-and-so, or about that, let's go see Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. Movies that were about something. An unmarried woman. And that saved cinema in a way because TV wouldn't touch that stuff. And now TV deals in it extensively. I just watched Mayor of Easttown. That's the new TV series on HBO Max that stars Kate Winslet. I mean, that's as dark and grim as anything in American cinema from the 60s. And what Reed Hastings realized was that you could reverse the formula. You could make it a pool of entertainment so large that people didn't need to go anywhere else. If you just turned on Netflix, what were you feeling like? You want a crime show? You want a documentary? You want a World War II documentary? You want a sex documentary? You want an expose? You want a melodrama? You want a classic? If you just go through our menu, we'll use our algorithms to cultivate that menu and you will find something. You don't have to read reviews, and you don't have to check the newspaper. You just go to Netflix, and within 10 minutes, you'll find something you want to see. And so Reed reversed the strategy from a specific movie to just going to Netflix. And when my cousin said, we watch Netflix, what she meant was that if we want to watch something, we'll turn on Netflix, and sure enough, we'll find something we want to watch. We don't need to plan ahead. And it's free. Once you've paid your subscription price, it's free. The differential cost makes it good enough. Good enough for free. Yeah. And then, of course, COVID exacerbated that. So the few people who were still on the fence about staying home didn't have a choice. And once you get into the mindset, you sit down and you turn on Netflix and you go right to documentaries and start scrolling through the documentaries because they're very aggressively doing documentaries and they're cost efficient. They're like reality TV for intellectuals. So how does Netflix favor the series rather than the feature film? I mean, after all, Netflix is producing some really good features that nobody else is making. Yeah, and they're making money on some of them. They just made money on this revenge film. But the comfort aspect of the series is that you don't even need to scroll through anything. You've watched 2 episodes of something, Pretty Young Things, Pretty Little Things, whatever, and you like it and say, I'll watch the next one. So you don't even have to decide. You don't even have to watch a trailer. There's so many out there, you can sample them like Forrest Gump's box of chocolates. And if you like the first episodes, you're on Easy Street for a couple of weeks. Well, what's the difference for you in the art? You wrote on Facebook that the transition from the feature to streaming is stripping storytelling of its ability to compose concise stories which land like a punch in the face. What a great... Oh, can I read that again? Stripping storytelling of its ability to compose concise stories which land like a punch in the face. What for you is the difference artistically between feature filmmaking and a series? Well, a feature film, hopefully if you're an artist, each time you have a problem, a subject matter, and you need to create a style that really works. With episodic, you create a template, and then the directors just follow that template. So if you're doing The Crown, you're doing a lot of soft focus and backlighting. They all look the same. And that's kind of a comfort, too, because every time you watch The Crown, you know exactly how it's going to look. The challenge of independent film is creating something that feels new, and that's going less and less in favor. And I think you can just look at film criticism and see that, because I remember when people would read film criticism and say, what's new? What do I need to see? What's this film that Oliver Stone did about Vietnam? I think we should see that. That seems to be less and less a part of the conversation. Interestingly, I think those are 2 separate issues. For instance, what you were saying about the difference between the series and the feature, if I'm understanding correctly, is essentially the difference between a director's medium and a writer's medium. Yes, and not only a writer's medium, a writer's room medium. You know the difference. Well, how would you describe the difference? I mean, I'm a writer, but if I'd work for episodic, I'm in a writer's room. There's 5 or 6 other people in there. Because with few exceptions, usually these things are written by a writer's room. And so you're always compromising and coming up with ideas. And so the idea of a strong singular voice, the idea of, say, Woody Allen, you can't watch a Woody Allen film without realizing you're watching a Woody Allen film, even the stinkers. But a lot of the shows, they have that committee imprint. And that also changes what you expect from a movie. So a film like Nomadland, which is a unique film, a unique style, a unique voice, how does that find its way to the cinemas anymore? Would it be very different if you were watching Nomadland at home? In other words, is there a significant difference between Nomadland produced for theatrical release and Nomadland produced for Netflix? Yeah, well, I watched it at home, and it was a big difference. I had no commitment to it. There was no decision. Let's go to the Burns and see Nomadland. It's like going to a church in a way. You don't walk out of a church because you're bored. You went there to be bored. You went there to have that experience. And if you go to the Burns to see Nomadland, you're going to stick it out unless you really hate it. When you're watching it at home, it's not that same kind of commitment. And therefore, you think differently of the film. I think Nomadland is a bit of fake poverty. I would feel that if I saw that in the theater too. But I know I would have a more focused view of it. And it's just so easy to let something go at home. I want to say this is the thing that I most believe in. I am a firm believer in the movie-going experience because of the fact that you're committed intellectually, your senses are committed, everything about you, as far as your intellect and who you are as a person, is committed to the experience of watching a movie when you're in the theater. And when you're watching something that really turns your crank, being in that theater is the best way to see a film. I honestly believe that when you watch a movie at home, no matter what, I know that I can barely watch one episode of TV without one of my dogs barking at me and wanting to go outside or wanting my attention. This is something that will happen every single time I watch something, and frankly, it's really annoying. We have a crazy dog. What can I say? She comes from a barn and an Amish farm. Who knows? I mean, that's true, by the way. But you can't focus the way you can in a theater. And for whatever reason, I've trained my brain to be able to soak up the things I see on a movie screen like a sponge. I have a much harder time doing that when I watch TV at home. But how is that different from the age of VHS or DVDs? Did you feel that there was a cinema apocalypse on the way when people started renting video cassettes rather than going to the movies? No. I think that to me back in the day, it was an adjunct. It was secondary. It was still, I would go to the movie theaters, and if there was something, and of course it didn't show up on VHS for 6 months anyway. So if you wanted to see a film noir classic or something, you could get it at Blockbuster. But if you wanted to see a real movie, you had to go to the movie theater. And that's another thing that's collapsed. So do you think that because filmmakers are likely not to have the same resources, the same amount of money, the same budget level to make feature films that they would have, say, 20 years ago, there's a certain freedom that comes with it? Well, there's a lot of freedom. The film that I took 42 days to make when I started, I now make in 20. First Reformed was 20. My new film, The Card Counter, is 20. And the quality is the same. You just move much, much faster. Everything is cheaper. Everything is faster. So the upside is that movies that could not afford to be made now are being made. Anybody can make a movie. Anybody who has a phone can make a movie. The downside is, although anybody can make a movie, nobody can make a living. Because in the 60s, if you got to make a movie, you made a living. You got a salary. Today, you can make a movie without getting a salary, and you can make a $5 million movie for $50,000 and lose $50,000. And so many of these young filmmakers they're making films they weren't allowed to make before, but they're not making a living. And if they're not getting the kind of distribution, I mean, you see it all the time. Films that are just being thrown out the car window, hoping somebody finds them and watches them. Which gives film critics a role again, one hopes. Yeah, if they can find somebody to pay them. Have you ever entertained the possibility of working for a streaming service directly, whether a feature film or a series? Yeah. Well, Scorsese and I are planning something, and it would be a 3-year series about the origins of Christianity. Fiction? Drama? No. It's based on the Apostles and on the Apocrypha. It's called The Apostles and the Apocrypha because people sort of know the New Testament, but nobody knows the Apocrypha. And back in the first century, there was no New Testament. There was just these stories. And some were true and some weren't. And some were forgeries. But these will be dramatized like The Last Temptation? Yep. This gives me something to look forward to. I will be subscribing. So I think there's a lot of truth there. And, from my own experience, I mean, I've only really ever worked in the low-budget realm. And nowadays, I mean, just in the last 5 years of my experience, I was the editor on this low-budget sci-fi film called Paradox. Now, it did open in a theater. It was contractually open. It opened here at the Arena Theater in L.A., which is a very small venue. But it was designed to be sold to a distributor. As long as we delivered it on time, they knew how much money they were going to make. But the thing about Paradox is, while I'm really proud of the work that I did on this low-budget film, no one's ever going to look at Paradox and go, oh my God, that was amazing. I mean, some people might really like it, especially if you're a kid and saw it. I think it would have an impact. But when I worked on this film, I didn't work on it less hard than I've worked on some other movies just because it was low budget, just because I knew that it'd be lucky to show up on video at some point, even though it's been on both Netflix and Amazon. You still put the same amount of work into it. And who's going to see it? That's the problem we now have with our own film, Tango Shalom. We're taking it out. We just got into the Buenos Aires International Film Festival yesterday, which I think is pretty cool. You make a low-budget movie, you work on it, and suddenly the Buenos Aires Film Festival says, oh, we like your movie. Please play it for our audiences. There's nothing more gratifying than that. But the real question is, say you make a movie now for $5, even $10 million. Who's going to play it? Will it get distributed in theaters? Who knows? Because you have to market it. People have to know it's in theaters. Even studios aren't making movies for $10 or $20 million anymore. Not that they haven't for a long time, but there were some studios that would. The only person that's doing consistent business, I think, at that budget level successfully is Blumhouse, Jason Blum. And, he has a model that works. A movie like The Invisible Man, Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man, comes out for $8 million, or it's made for $8 million, turns out great. Lee Whannell has cut his teeth. I mean, he was one of the originators of the Saw franchise. He made Upload. He made Invisible Man. His second feature makes him for a price. That movie comes out, makes $100 million. That's a huge hit. Huge hit for Lee Whannell. But that's because he's got Jason Blum behind him. How many other filmmakers? Why doesn't every studio have a Blumhouse? Well, because you needed Jason Blum. And not every studio. The studios don't have anybody like that. They're not there to cultivate new talent, even though I think they should be. Why not? All the studios are shooting for the fences, but why not do both? Make big, giant franchise movies and have a program where, we're going to have new filmmakers come in. But the thing is, there's no money there. My own film, The Hills Run Red, was a direct-to-video Warner Brothers movie. It was part of a 10-film effort by Warner Premiere and Dark Castle, Joel Silver's Dark Castle Entertainment, that got scrapped after 2 because why make these low-budget movies when you make a movie for, between $2 and $5 million and you're going to make 20 or 25 million? Why do that when you can make big-budget tentpole movies? Where's the financial incentive for these large corporations? I mean, you might always make money, but if you're only making, let's say, $10 million a movie, or even $5 million a film on an investment of $5 million, and you say you make 15 or 20, and you basically get $5 million profit. I'd think that, well, you're cultivating new talent, and you're able to have long-time relationships with them, and you move them up. I mean, it's almost like we should go back to the old studio system. I don't know if we ever will, but things change. I just see that movie-going has been irrevocably altered, and I don't see it going back. It's not the same as it was when I was a kid. I just love movies, and I don't want to see them go away. And hopefully they don't. I mean, entertainment's not going away. Streaming shows are obviously doing very, very well. Documentaries are doing very, very well. But the theatrical experience, I think it was really interesting that Paul Schrader said Nomadland is fake poverty. Well, movies are all fake. If you're making a narrative feature, there's very little in a narrative feature that's real. And there's less real in a narrative feature now than there's ever been before. So you have to ask yourself, what is it you want? I like the 90-minute or 2-hour framework. Like Paul Schrader said, you can hit somebody and you can hit them hard with whatever you want to give them. A horror film, a drama, a comedy, something socially aware. That 2-hour paradigm has stood for almost a century, and I think it's a good paradigm. And I don't want it to see it go away. But without movie theaters, what's the point? When you can make a streaming show make an 8-part series for a streamer, But it's a different world, and we all have to ask ourselves, what is it we want, or what is it we should have? Everything is, things are different. Things are changing all the time. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, well, we'll see. Maybe it just is. This letter comes from Nigel Lowry. Nigel says, "Hi, Rob. Yes, it's time for another torrent of verbiage as the release of the first Eternals footage and the change titles of 2 MCU sequels to Black Panther Wakanda Forever and The Marvels has prompted me to express a concern of mine. There's a lot of ongoing discussion regarding the survival of the theatrical movie business, but Marvel and DC have made recent changes that threaten the comic industry. DC started this when they pulled out of their distribution deal with Diamond Comics. There were multiple distributors of comics to retailers in the 90s until Marvel decided to buy Heroes World and handle their own distribution. This resulted in various publishers signing exclusive distribution deals that led to a distribution war that ultimately ended up with Diamond being the sole distributor of all major comic companies in the US, the UK, and possibly a few other territories. DC has rumored to have been running its monthly titles at a loss for years, but still publishing to offset the collected editions, keep the IP in circulation, and to maintain certain copyrights, such as Superman and Wonder Woman. In fact, Marvel very nearly licensed the DC characters in 1984, and was the start of John Byrne's Man of Steel project, until First Comics threatens to sue on antitrust grounds. Both Marvel and DC have become very corporate over the last 15 years, with editorial taking a greater lead than the vision of creators that has traditionally steered both companies. This has led to DC relaunching its universe numerous times over the past decade as they try and rectify editorial decisions. The treatment of Wally West, for instance, based on a former executive's dislike for sidekick characters. Nightwing also very narrowly survived being killed off too. The line has also become less diverse, with Batman taking up about a third of the line, Superman, Wonder Woman, the JLA characters taking up most of the rest, with just a few odd properties like Suicide Squad and Teen Titans filling out the rest. There are also rumors that if the Rebirth launch failed, it would be the final straw for the current model. With DC going with an alternate distributor more focused on getting their books into bookshops where the collections have greater sales, rumors have risen again that the cutthroat owners of DC may be looking at licensing out their characters to other publishers so they don't have to waste time with the monthly business, which represents more hassle than it's worth in their overall business. At this point, DC and Marvel could probably both survive for a while based on their back catalogs alone, and there are more than enough story ideas there to fuel their filmed spin-offs. WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Suicide Squad all have their roots in 80s comics, for instance, throwing in elements from other eras as well. With Marvel now also pulling away from Diamond as their distributors to the mass market, I think they remain suppliers to comic shops. This is quite a concern when there is only one distributor to comic shops. As Marvel and DC form the majority of comic book sales, this represents a potential cash flow or financial viability concern for Diamond. I grew up on Marvel and DC, but rarely buy anything new from them, as their IP has been so mishandled over recent years that I can no longer enjoy their output, which is now quite expensive and can be read in only a few minutes. Bendis and Loeb both wasted double-page spreads devoted to logos with no story or art in relaunch issues at Marvel, for instance, which was unforgivable. However, there's a whole world of other comics out there. Image, IDW, Dark Horse, Dynamite, and Boom remain among the larger companies out there, but there are also companies translating manga and foreign material like Heavy Metal, publishing magazines about comics, printing licensed comics, alternative and independent comics, and reprinting older material in deluxe or affordable new volumes. This latter category tends to be where my comic book money goes nowadays. For instance, I'm hoping that Fantagraphics publish a second volume of Wally Wood EC science fiction stories, as the first only collected around half of his work. In my idle fantasies, I'd like to form my own company and print nice collections of Al Williamson's non-EC short strips from the 50s or 80s, or Marvel's UK Black Knight strip from 1979's Hulk Weekly, 3-page black and white serialized chapters where Merlin reunites Black Knight with an amnesiac Captain Britain and sets them forth on a fantasy quest to save Otherworld. It's Lord of the Rings with superhero leads, and it's awesome. I've attached a few quick images. My fear is that Marvel and DC could destabilize the comic market like it was in the 90s when it very nearly collapsed. If it does, it's not just the big two that go, but the other publishers and merchandise companies with it. Comic shops are probably my favorite places in the world, the purest wealth of imagination you can ever imagine. I can't even get into London's Forbidden Planet with having to stop and drool over all the hot toys, statues, and figurines lining the glass display cases as you pass the tills. So, Rob, I know you discussed some of this early on in A Midnight Metal, but what are your thoughts on the whole thing? So once again, sorry about the length, as the actress said to the bishop, and thanks for your indulgence, Nigel. Nigel, a lot of great points there. Look, I think all of these things that we as imagination connoisseurs love, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. We're living through a glorious time of amazing stuff that we're getting. But at the same time, comics, like anything else, they live and die based on whether or not they're compelling for audiences. I have to tell you, as far as modern comic output, I've bought certain omnibuses, I have Rebirth stuff, and I did buy the Court of Owls, and I did buy the House of X reboot and all of that kind of thing just to see where it was going, because it was such weird bonkers sci-fi. I went oh, okay, I'm there for that. But I'm really almost completely tuned out of modern comics, and when I read the stuff that goes on in these comics, I'm like, what is this? Of course, there's a lot of virtue signaling. I don't need to tell you all about the different kinds of material and how comic creators have now, rather than tell stories, their agendas come first. And of course, you all know that for me, you never have your agenda, your universe, or whatever come before your characters and stories. And once you've done that, which I think a lot of modern comics and a lot of genre fare, like, well, the High Republic, the Star Wars High Republic. A lot of people have told me that they do the same thing. And that's kind of too bad, because that's not what people want. When you're dealing with Star Wars, you're dealing with very much classical Joseph Campbellian storytelling. You know, you can't, if you want to make it of today and you're trying to infuse your modern viewpoint into things, everything is, you're wrong about everything, you must be all inclusive. Well, classical storytelling doesn't really fit. If you're going to start changing that kind of paradigm, you're going to get rid of everybody that reads your stuff, because nobody wants to read what the modern age is like when you're reading Star Wars. It happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And today's modern identity politics, they didn't have that in a galaxy far, far away, nor should they. I mean, to be like remaking Game of Thrones and having everybody treated correctly by everyone. No, we're going to make sure that everybody's included and everybody's treated respectfully. I mean, where would your story be then? I think it's problematic. I mean, I think the comic book industry has sort of done this to itself. And, of course, again, it's a changing medium. When you can get things digitally, when you get these beautiful omnibuses or these absolute editions, how many people are going to buy your weekly flippers? I mean, again, it's a changing business. Cut to the fact that you have a lot of creators now, a lot of writers have come in and they want to inject their own personal politics. That's always happened, but it used to be that writers understood how to do it. They weren't so didactic about it. And nowadays, everyone's wearing their heart on their sleeves, and it doesn't work well. So, what are you going to do? I don't know if comic books are going to be around. I think that what I see, and what I see a lot of this stuff, what I see happening is, I'll give you an example. So everyone knows there's a company making Prisoner, like Patrick McGowan's The Prisoner action figures. They wanted to make a certain amount of money. They got a license and they went to Kickstarter. They crowdfunded these Prisoner action figures, and they wanted, as a matter of fact, this is pretty interesting. Let me just go. Let me go and find out. So they asked for $20,000. So these Prisoner action figures, $20,000. That's what they wanted. So that was what they asked for. They go directly to their let's see, the people that, right on Kickstarter, the people that would fund these figures and buy them. And so here they are. The Prisoner retro style action figures. They originally asked for $20,000. They now have 1,434 backers that have given them $153,247 as of right now. That's gigantic. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Ethan Van Sciver has gone with his comic Cyberfrog. He went directly to the fans. Made a lot of money. Jason Inman and his wife Ashley, they went for their comic Jupiter Jet, crowdfunded it. Were able to make it work economically, and they sold directly to the fans. There was no middleman. All the money came to them. They had to pay, of course, their printers or their artists and inkers, but they were able to make their book and sell it directly to the fans. I see a lot more of that going on. I know that because of YouTube, like, for instance, I have a worldwide audience. I once self-published my own comic book. It hasn't been available, just like Free Enterprise, for over 15 years. And Ben Rabb and Derek Hughes, who created Living in Infamy, they're known now because they've worked on the CW shows, and I've thought about just putting our comic back into print, doing a Kickstarter for it, getting it really nicely printed, maybe do a hardcover slipcase volume. I would have my platform here. You know, even if say 10% of you said I'll buy one, you know, that's not so bad. I haven't done it yet, but I think it's something I'd want to do just to have it out in print. There was also a cover that I paid Matt Wagner to draw and paint, which is amazing. Matt Wagner of Grendel and Mage fame. He did a cover that, as of yet, has never been used and never been seen. So why not make that the cover of the graphic novel? Could be very cool. Or make it an alternate cover. I don't know. But I think going directly to the fan base is also another way to go. A subscription service or something like that. But things are changing. I haven't bought monthly books, monthly books. I used to buy monthly books. I mean, I've still got Again, I have a wall of long boxes right over there that I want to move into our storage shed, but because I don't want them anymore. I've pulled out all the ones I'm going to get slabbed and sell. I just don't. I wish somebody would just come and take the whole kit and caboodle away, or leave them by the side of the road. I've said it before. It's like, come take these away, and there's got to be some stuff in there you might enjoy. But I think it's just a different world, and I don't know if monthly comic books are going to survive. However, I know that graphic novels will, so maybe they'll move to a different format. Maybe get rid of the weekly books and go strictly to a format you brought up, Nigel, in your letter, that sometimes comic books can be read in 2 minutes. It's all pictures. I mean, I used to read like a Marv Wolfman New Teen Titans comic, and it might have taken me a half an hour because there's a lot of text, and you really go through it, and you really absorb it. I haven't felt that absorbed by a comic in a very, very, very long time. So, good letter, though, man. A good letter. I want to thank you for that. This one comes from our old friend Christopher McCulloch. Always a good letter from Christopher. Let's see if this one lives up to his hype. He writes, in writing on the most recent season of The Mandalorian, I found myself often repeating many of the points I made in a previous letter on the first season and decided to make this one more of an addendum to that. Addendum. Another year, another season of The Mandalorian. Oddly, I find myself neither disappointed nor enthused. It ended up being almost a net zero for the character Mando, largely because this season was not really about his story, but more about resetting him and setting the table for the slate of spin-offs to come. I understand for a lot of people, the shine of the child was an obsession they feared would tarnish with familiarity, but I would have happily watched multiple seasons of Mando playing lone wolf and cub through the galaxy in an errant quest for mystics. Exploring an infinite galaxy of adventure with an infant wizard and his metal guardian sounds pretty heavy metal to me, alas. But the expanded universe is the paramount concern for Disney. If your TV shows aren't synergizing with each other, people won't know about all the other characters they need to buy merch for. I'd been afraid fan service would be my biggest problem going in, but it turns out that it was the Marvelization that impacted the story most. Ahsoka has an anime fight before looking into the camera to say Thrawn. Bo-Katan is introduced and Mando made relevant to her story, while baby Grogu and Luke disappear off to possibly make further cameos or even a Jedi Academy show. Not to mention the very Marvel post-credit scene introducing yet another spin-off with Boba Fett, who wasn't cut in half but did fall down an endless pit. I probably would have felt more aghast about his resurrection if the show hadn't given clues to the obsessive canon disorder nerds that needed the most. On this last point, circumstances beyond my control have kept me from watching this season with any normies, so it helps me discern between what works in the show and what works for me. Like that time walking out of Solo when I had to resignedly explain that it indeed took place after episode 1, so whether or not all these cameos and resurrections bogged down the narrative for them as much as it did for me, I can't say. This is a long-winded way of saying all my fears for season 2 were realized. Filoni's canon has been successfully grafted, all the while setting up the Marvel method of media saturation, pleasing all masters, and yet, thanks to some compelling character moments and world building, I've still enjoyed it. I've seen the big board with all the shows on it, so I know that we'll be getting a lot of Star Wars in our near future. With so many shows on the horizon, Filoni and Kennedy don't even need to jockey for any Lebensraum. It'll be interesting to see how much contrition Disney shows for bungling the rollout of their brand new franchise and how conscientious Lucas will be to avoid that kind of dysfunction that running in so many different directions has created. Doing too much too quickly was the downfall of the sequel trilogy. Star Wars now is in full streaming mode, and it only means there are many more plates to spin. I didn't used to think Star Wars could be all things to all people, but Disney seems to want to attempt it. May the Force be with them. I still have reservations. You know what, Christopher? I have to tell you, I'm with you. I mean, I've enjoyed The Mandalorian, but I don't think it's by any means a great TV show. It's fun, but it doesn't really resonate with me. It's almost like watching. I feel in a way, I feel sort of detached, and I'm watching these stories that are set in the Star Wars universe that I like, but they don't really affect me. They're just, okay, I'm watching these things happen. Do I need to be watching them happen? No, but it makes me think there's a lot of other things going on in the Star Wars universe too that can be just as compelling. I mean, Grogu was cute, but I don't feel that the storytelling was particularly epic. There was a couple of episodes that I really liked. The Bill Burr episode I thought was pretty amazing. For what it was amazing as far as Star Wars on TV goes. And as far as Star Wars on TV goes, that's live action. Well, you've got the Ewok Adventures, and you got the Star Wars Holiday Special, and you've got, like, The Mandalorian. And if in terms of that, The Mandalorian's clearly the best. But it's fun to see someone like IG-11, voiced by Taika Waititi, kicking ass. Kicking ass. But, I mean, you know, I read Tales of the Bounty Hunters. I knew where IG-88 once was. He was going to take over the Death Star 2 before he got blown up. You know, so I'm watching all this stuff, and it's all fan service, and it's all fun, but I feel like I haven't been told a new story yet. I don't know if they really... I haven't seen a Star Wars story that really works. A new Star Wars story. I'm waiting. Where's the Lawrence of Arabia of Star Wars? Where's the Bridge on the River Kwai of Star Wars? Where's the Tora of Star Wars? I don't know. Will they work? I don't know. But for right now, you know, The Mandalorian certainly repaired a little bit of the disservice the sequel trilogy did and keep people interested in Star Wars. It's really interesting that you look over... I always look at the Hot Toys litmus test. What Hot Toys are selling? The sequel trilogy toys didn't sell, other than the legacy characters as older people. But certainly the rest, you can get them. They're not that expensive. The Rogue One figures sold. Why? Because they're part of the original Star Wars era. And they did really well. So, all good. But I wish it was better. Jason Webster says, "Hi, Robert. I hope yourself and the scintillating members of the Post-Geek Singularity have an excellent weekend and are fully renewed for the week ahead. I know I've approached this topic before. However, I believe it is an interesting subject for discussion to involve new members of the Post-Geek Singularity, as they might like to disclose their recommendations for likely remakes in the chat. I feel that instead of producing countless remakes of films only 10 years old and the endless stream of reboots, Hollywood studios should produce remakes of films released some considerable time ago that sounded good in a treatment but for some reason didn't transfer well onto film. Whether it was inadequate scripts, low budgets, poor acting, or simply being a case of the right film being released at the wrong time. These are just some of the films I believe deserve a remake." Wow. Crossplot. City Beneath the Sea, Countess Dracula, Night Flight from Moscow, The Thief Who Came to Dinner, Juggernaut, The Odessa File, The Ultimate Warrior, with Yul Brynner, Night Moves, The Marseille Contract, The Iger Sanction, Burnt Offerings, The Cassandra Crossing, I have that on Blu-ray, The Black Hole, I also have that on Blu-ray, Escape to Athena, Sea Wolves, Watcher in the Woods, Explorers, I have that on Blu-ray, Enemy Mine, which I have on Blu-ray, although I have to say that while I have concluded in the list, like yourself, Robert, I liked The Cassandra Crossing. It was successful in Japan. I love how you stated you would love to remake 2010, the year we made contact. I would really be down for seeing it on the silver screen if you, Robert, were to receive the opportunity to do it. It would certainly be a very interesting film. Also, I would love an official live-action film set within the Star Trek franchise directed by you. Well, it's very kind of you to say. Your knowledge and love of the franchise is unparalleled. That, coupled with your passion for and experience in filmmaking, would result in a great film being realized on the big screen. I agree. But I've digressed ever so slightly back to the subject at hand. Apart from that particular film, what other films would you love to see receive their second shot at glory? Well, that's it for me. I hope yourself and the Post-Geek Singularity have a great start to the week. Sincerely, Jason Webster. Well, Jason, it's always a good question. I mean, you know, you're talking about... look... I mean, I would love to remake things in a modern, like when I think about, like I like Hammer movies. I would love to do modern remakes of some Hammer movies, like The Devil Rides Out or Vampire Circus. I think somebody should make a modern Quatermass movie. I'd love to see a modern Quatermass movie. Prince of Darkness pointed the direction, but a real Quatermass movie, you know? I think that would be great. You know, I was talking about, was it yesterday? I was talking about They Came From Beyond Space. I mean, I'd love to see a remake of that. I don't know who would make that. But there's a lot of great B horror and science fiction movies that people wouldn't necessarily think about. There's a it's going to seem ridiculous, but there's a movie called Invasion of the Bee-Girls. I think you could do a really interesting, very relevant remake of that film. Shout Factory put it out on Blu-ray. If you haven't seen Invasion of the Bee-Girls, and I mean bee like bees, bumblebees, bzz, Invasion of the Bee-Girls, go check out that trailer. I think you could do something really, really great with that. There's a lot of, I mean, even on your list, I think Night Moves is a really great movie, but could it be remade? Sure. Does Explorers need to be remade? I don't know about that. I thought it was being remade as a series. And Enemy Mine, maybe. But I'd rather go and take lesser known fare or lower budget fare and take things and update them. But so often remakes just aren't that great because movies are as much a product of their time as they are a product of their filmmaking. But that's kind of something, that I would think about. This one comes from Yellow Flash. Hello to the great RMB. I know that you get tons of letters differing on various subjects, but I wanted to talk to you about Mobile Suit Gundam. Oh my God. Mobile Suit Gundam. Everyone knows how much I love Mobile Suit Gundam. You know I do. Uh-oh, what have I done? What have I done? I zapped the letter I was reading. Oops, didn't mean to. As far back as I can remember from childhood, the first thing I can remember watching was Voltron in the 1980s. Watching the 5 lions come together to form a supergiant robot was unlike anything I'd ever seen. My older brother, who was 6 years older than me, would scoff at me and say, "Doesn't compare to Robotech," the show he adored when he was my age at the time. I love the mecha robot genre shows that existed, but I wasn't crazy about Transformers like my friends in school were, or like John Campea. That being said, I would find certain shows that appealed to my older senses, such as Tekkaman Blade, Bubblegum Crisis, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Gatchaman, Battle of the Planets. But on March 6, 2000, Cartoon Network started airing Mobile Suit Gundam Wing. When I first saw the trailer for the show, I couldn't believe that I'd never checked out the highly regarded Mecha series. I was mad at myself for not realizing that it was possibly the first giant robot mecha show to ever be created. Well, it might have been the first of the real robot shows that were created. There was the Super Robots of the 70s, and it had been around for so many decades. Unlike shows like Robotech and Voltron that dealt with humans fighting against alien invaders, Mobile Suit Gundam instead focused on humans battling other humans. That blew my mind. It was realizing the weight of what it meant to have humans kill other humans, whether they were on foot, inside office buildings within metropolitan cities, or within a mobile suit. Gundam Wing, unlike previous Gundam series before it, featured 5 unique Gundam pilots and their unique Gundams as its protagonist, rather than having just one character being an ace pilot of the mobile suit. The show tugged at my heartstrings as it brought me back to the 5 pilots of Voltron, each one manning their own robot lion. I loved how cynical, fearless, and utterly ruthless each Gundam pilot was. Even Winter, who amongst the 5 pilots was the most compassionate. Eventually, the toll and bloodshed of the war finally catches up. Oh, it's Quatre, by the way. Quatre Renner. As he begins to destroy space colonies out of rage of losing his family members, friends, and comrades. It was awesome. The characters in these cartoons just felt real. Even though the whining and screaming often got tiresome and old, even I have to admit that. The show's ending, spoiler for a show that's now 26 years old, had one of the greatest endings to a show I'd ever seen. Watching Hero and Zex, 2 men who would battle each other throughout the entire show with their respective mobile suits, and different ones as well, have their final duel inside a piece of spaceship that is plummeting towards Earth was nothing short of insane to me. There just wasn't anything like this in any kind of an American show, live action or animated, like this. It's one of the many reasons I love the medium of anime. You can convey and do things in this genre, anime specifically really, that I truly believe you cannot do in any other form. In 2007, I was in my second year of college at University of Arizona, and I found myself falling out of love for the genre of anime. I believe the best had already come and passed, and then that there was nothing worth spending my money on, and that all changed when I discovered Mobile Suit Gundam 00. I fell back in love with the giant mecha show once again. The main character, Setsuna, looked like me, and it made me identify myself within a show that I never dreamed was possible. Let's face it, most anime characters and American cartoon characters were mostly white. The only time there was a character that bore the resemblance to me was Apu from The Simpsons, and most of the time I was pretty much mocked for being an immigrant that spoke in a funny accent. That was not the case with Setsuna. He felt real and tangible. He was a Kurdish child soldier that had witnessed war at such a young age. He felt that with the help of his mobile suit, he could change the outcome of the world as a whole and stop all useless wars. Again, it was rad as hell, man. In 2014, I moved to San Diego to complete my PhD program in clinical research at the University of California, San Diego. I'd just broken up with my girlfriend at the time, and I didn't really know anyone there, so I spent the majority of my time with my nose in books and in front of my laptop. When I did have any downtime, I would go surfing and hunt for the best tacos I could, but I still found myself getting bored and restless. I was tired of watching the same old movies that I'd seen numerous times, and it was time to plunge back into the world of Gundam. And boy, did I binge the shit out of the series. I watched almost every Gundam series there was, except for that Gundam Fighter show. Yeah, it's tough. Gundam Fighter's tough. I understand what they're doing, but it's tough. And Gundam Seed, people tell me to give Seed a chance, but I can't get into the characters, plot, and the animation. I watched Gundam Unicorn baked out of my mind, and I ended up almost having a panic attack because of how soul-shattering the story was. When certain characters died, it felt like you were losing characters that you'd followed in a novel, or a highly touted series that could be a sister show to Game of Thrones. However, there really is nothing like the original Mobile Suit Gundam 0079. The story, epic. The Zaku's, dope. The lone RX-78 Gundam Mobile Suit, which would become the launch pad for other numerous Gundam models to come, impeccable. Even the story's setting, one that tells of the Earth succumbing to climate change, famine, displacement of whole populations, and war, leading to humans wanting to branch out into space, just floored me. I mean, this was a manga show that was created in 1979, but it felt decades beyond its time. It's probably how you felt when you first saw Star Wars in 77, huh? And Rob, can we talk about Char as Novel? The Red Comet himself? I mean, what an unbelievable character. Yes, he is. He's cold, calculating, always 500 steps ahead of everyone else, and possibly the greatest mobile suit pilot ever. He tells his engineers that his red Zaku feels slow and to enhance the speed mechanics, while any other human would die from the duress and the sheer force of gravity that the Zaku places on the pilot. Though he reminds me a little of Speed Racer's older brother Rex, he totally does. He's still really only of a kind. A few days ago, I stumbled on something called Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin, which is dope as fuck. It tells of Char and Sayla's past, but also expands on the history of the two characters, as well as how the Year One War, often referred to as the greatest tragedy of mankind, came to be. Have you seen the OVAs, Rob? While the lack of mobile suit battles and fights, it's human elements of the movies that I find so appealing. Anyway, I think I've barked on for long enough. If you're reading this to your live audience, they're probably wondering, is this guy going to shut the hell up or not? Ha 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 ha. I don't ever send in super chats, and this is the first letter I've ever typed to someone I've been watching on YouTube for almost a decade now, so I hope you and your viewers will forgive me. But I just truly had to write you, dude. I feel like you're one of the few people that gets this stuff truly and loves it with the same passion as I do. Thank you for your time, Rob, and let's pray that they don't fuck up the live-action Gundam movie. Ha 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 ha. Yellow Flash. Well, Yellow Flash, a great letter. You know, I feel you, man, because I feel like not a lot of people know Gundam. You know, it didn't come to America. Gundam Wing was the first Gundam they brought to America. And, I mean, it's huge in Japan, both with boys and girls. And just go on YouTube and look up. There's Gundam modeling channels like my beloved Genic, or there's people like Gundam Melly, a girl that I feel terrible about watching. At least I always watch her in front of Elizabeth, so she knows I'm not, like, you know, doing anything untoward when I watch Gundam Melly's channel alone. And I, you know, I love my Gundam models. I'm never too far away from my Japanese super robots. But Gundam, for those of you who don't know, Gundam is an anime that is basically about the futility of war. And as we've talked about before, I talked about it on the show, there is a single continuity called the Universal Century that has gone through different iterations, like the original Gundam from '79 and Zeta Gundam and Gundam Unicorn. And the Gundam Origin is also all part of the Universal Century. And then there are other alternate universe Gundams like G Fighter and G Savior, I guess. And the G Savior, is that Universal Century? But Gundam Wing, which is a great series, is not part of the Gundam continuity, but it uses Gundam concepts and Gundam Mecha. And there's like Turn A Gundam. So there's different kinds. I mean, in a way, it's kind of how I wish they dealt with Star Trek. That modern Star Trek, beginning in 1970 or in 2009, was in fact an alternate universe the whole time. Discovery is an alternate universe, Picard alternate universe, whatever. I wish that they had done that because Gundam sets that precedent. I mean, in a way, I guess Evangelion now has too with its movie series. But I'm a huge fan of Gundam. Fighting robots, it's got epic storytelling, it's got people dying, it's got war. There's nothing with Gundam that you can't enjoy, I don't think. So why not do it? Why not watch Gundam? Dip into it, see what you think. So yeah, why not? This one comes from our friend Omar94. Hi, Rob, moderators of the Post-Geek Singularity. This new sizzle reel of MCU movies got me wondering something. The comics have been around for decades, and the characters have had countless stories over those decades due to the floating timeline which exists in comics. However, since real life lacks a floating timeline, that makes me interested in knowing how long the MCU will go under Kevin Feige's watchful eye. There's two ways how I could see the MCU go. On one hand, it will go on in the same continuity for who knows how long, even if Kevin Feige leaves and someone else takes over. The movies will do either a passing of the torch type of thing with new people taking on the heroes' mantles due to the original cast members getting older, or if the plan is to do a floating timeline type of a thing, do a James Bond thing and recast the actors so the heroes don't age that much despite the changing years. On the other hand, Kevin Feige has a plan to do a definitive end where the current universe comes full circle and does a big series finale type thing so everything gets wrapped up and comes to a close, all with the same cast. Then that would be when he leaves and someone else will come in and either remake or reboot the MCU from scratch. Now, granted, that's just me theorizing since I have no idea what will happen, but those are the two ways which I could see the MCU go. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, for the first, I think I would say that I think the MCU will go on as long as it will make money. But I do see something interesting happening. Like, I don't know if there's necessarily an end game for the whole MCU, but I could see there could be a finite time put on it. I mean, the Bond franchise has been going since 1962. We're finally getting the 25th movie now in 2021. It was supposed to come out in 2020. I mean, that's almost, that's a big stretch of time. The 50th anniversary was 2012. So you're what? You're almost at the 60th. You're one year short of the 60th anniversary. I mean, it's almost like they should wait and release No Time to Die for the 60th anniversary and celebrate that and make it a year-long Bond celebration. By the way, don't get any ideas. I want to see this damn movie. But I think with the MCU, we've already got, was John Campea pointed out today, with WandaVision and now Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we have 25 Marvel programs, 25 movies and TV shows. We're going to get 26 with Loki, 27 with Black Widow, and then you're going to get 28 with the Eternals, 29 with Shang-Chi, 28 with Shang-Chi, 29 with the Eternals, and 30. And Hawkeye, 31. So eventually, I mean, maybe the MCU could go for another. I mean, we're already 13 years into it. I would definitely pick a final date. Like maybe Kevin Feige is going to stick around. I mean, why not? He's certainly got another 10 years. He's doing well. I mean, he's getting richer than anyone else in Hollywood probably. So why not do that? But I think eventually everything has to end, or at least be put away for a while. And I think that on one hand, I mean, I don't know if they're going to have like some world or universe destroying cataclysmic event and the universe is rebooted, although that would be really cool. I don't know, as long as people are going to see it. So yeah, there you go. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with it. Like, how long are they going to keep it going? And I don't know the answer to that. And I think as long as they're making money, why would they stop? I know there's definitely a period where a lot of people are poo-pooing what they've seen. And I don't know how long it is, in fact, going to last. But we will see. We shall see where it goes. I think, you know what? I think I'm going to jump over to you guys now and see where you are at. Where are you at here? Willow. Willow is here. Willow sends in a tip and says, if Phlox has 3 wives and each of the wives have 3 husbands, and each of the husbands presumably have 3 wives themselves, would the whole denobulan population eventually be related to each other by marriage? What would a family gathering look like? Well, certainly that's a good point, Willow. I don't know what the answer is to that. I really don't. But probably a family gathering would get huge. I think that the fact that denobulans travel, maybe their influence grows. But that's a really interesting question to see. I do not know the answer, but whatever that answer might be, I wouldn't mind going to a family gathering that way. I mean, can you imagine how fun that would be? Those conversations and what might go on. I mean, what if you're a denobulan swinger? That could get complicated. I don't know what's going to happen there. Jody Money became a member of the channel. Thank you, Jody Money. Tom Bosley. Oh, Tom, how you doing? One of my favorite dads. The syndicated film documentary show you were thinking of was called That's Hollywood. That's right. That's what it was. That's Hollywood was a 30-minute color documentary series on movies from the 20th Century Fox archive. Tom Bosley narrated the series. That's Hollywood. I don't know why I couldn't think about that. I love That's Hollywood. I live for that. Changes. Sends in a tip and says, it's true. Entertainment changes. Live theater is only for those who can afford it. The circus is no longer a huge draw. Radio is mainly right-wing or sports talk radio now. People watch sports on cable now. Every game is broadcast somewhere. Things be changing. I know. Things be changing. I don't like it, but things do be changing. 200-Watt Studios sends in a super chat and says, everything changed. Spell broken. People comfortable at home watching movies and even want to homeschool their kids now. Society is irrevocably changed. Look, I agree. I think, maybe we've gone back to a way that it used to be where people are staying at home longer. I think that unfortunately, that's too bad. I mean, it's so weird to me living in a vibrant city like Los Angeles with all of our culture. I've barely left the house for over a year. I never thought that would be the case. There's so much to do in this city, and I've become a homebody, which, I mean, if you call me up at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night and say, hey, man, come out to this club, I'd be the guy that goes, yes, I'll be there in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or however long it took me to get there. I'm coming. I used to be that guy. Even now, even as a middle-aged man with 1 foot in the grave, I'm not that way anymore, I don't think. And that bothers me. It bothers me immensely. Everything is changing. But there you go. Sheriff Carl sends in a tip and says, I don't like watching movies drunk because then I want to start smoking cigarettes and sing Bob Seger or Manowar songs. But if a theater let you smoke bowls, I used to see movies at the Neptune and smoke joints up in the balcony. I love that shit. Oh, man, I miss the Neptune. The Neptune was our landmark theater. I saw movies like Solo there, The 120 Days of Sodom. Yes, I saw it in a theater with my friends. That was an experience, let me tell you. Sheriff Carl also says, dude, that Arrow Dimension trilogy restoration looks beautiful and metal as fuck. Shit comes out on my birthday, and I'm totally going to call out of work to watch that shit. I know, and I'd love to see that, and I'll probably get it myself. Because why not? Wouldn't you? I mean, I'll probably buy it. Arrow has been crushing it. Go to Arrow. I mean, Battle Royale just came out. Donnie Darko just came out. They're crushing it. Todd Michael is here. Todd Michael says, come on, man, let's crowdsource and buy up the IP and remake Laser Blast. I don't think we'd have to buy the IP. It's Charlie Band's. I could probably call Charlie Band right now and say, yo, man, we want to remake Laser Blast. Didn't he remake Laser Blast? I don't know. I've wanted to remake Laser Blast for years now. We need to snag this IP before Secret Hideout gets it and ruins it. And yes, I'm not joking. There's potential in Laser Blast. I think there is potential in Laser Blast. Laser Blast is the story of basically a guy. It starts out with these great stop-motion animation aliens in the beginning. And they drop, there's some tech, a laser blaster, and a necklace that's left behind, and a kid finds it. He gets to read out or live out his revenge fantasies. It's good stuff, let me tell you. Alexander Wilson sends in a tip and says, I do agree that Gundam 79 and Zeta Gundam were the pinnacle of the series. I feel that Gundam 0080 was an underrated series. It is. I think it's pretty good. The Romeo and Juliet storyline, poignant moments, killing your love interest, and you don't even know it. Thoughts on Gundam 0080? I look, and 0083 too. I like those shows. They're set in the Universal Century. I think they're great. I've a lot of the Gundam. I've got the Gundam series, all those series on DVD, and I really need to upgrade that stuff because it's better in high def. But I think they're great. I think they're great. I love those shows, and like I said, I love the Universal Century. Man, is it getting hot in here? I don't know why my air conditioning is not working. Maybe it unplugged or something. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, Blame It on Rio is great fun, probably never to be remade. Nope. It is decidedly not for modern audiences, I don't think. Summer Camp Girls, little underwhelming, directed by Gary Graver. Orson Welles collaborator. Ooh, well, I didn't think Summer Camp Girls would be whelming. So hearing that it's underwhelming isn't surprising. You know, you could maybe do a Blame It on Rio where two older guys go to one of those sugar baby websites and get themselves two sugar babies. I mean, now, would that even be shocking? Would the idea of two guys hooking up with much younger girls but having to pay them for the opportunity? I mean, this is going on now. This is in our modern day. Maybe you could remake Blame It on Rio and delve in to the whole sugar baby phenom. That would be interesting. Yeah, well, one never knows. Or maybe one does. I don't know. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is going to be a short show today. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. Of course, I believe I'm going to be on Justin's channel later this afternoon. If I ever get a link. I have the link, but I don't know when and what time. We're supposed to be doing Whining About Movies, which I might not be able to do because I'm on Justin's channel, in which case we're pushing that to tomorrow. But we're doing Primer. For those of you who don't know, we are going to do Primer, Shane Carruth's time travel extravaganza. That might be one of the most interesting and complex time travel movies maybe ever. So come check that out. And yeah, I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank the Richard. I want to thank Louise X Sparrow. Jason Toner is here. Did I say Jason? Justin Toner's here. Why did I say Jason? Did I say Louise X Sparrow? Did I say her name correct? I can't. Apparently not. It's suddenly too damn hot in here to even think. So I want to thank you all for being here. I've got a great moderating staff. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel via super chats and tips, and also sending in letters. You can send letters to me at the Burnettwork.net and all of those things. So on that note, I want to say to all of you, I'll see you on the John Campea Show tomorrow. We will be back tomorrow. Az and I are going to be doing, of course, Fully Articulated and then Robservations. So join us for that. We're doing Fully Articulated on this channel. And other than that, I would say to all of you, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all we have to do, and all you have to do, is listen. And with that, I would say, have a better day.